US stealth monster F-47 is now ready. You know how the world has not even taken the F-35, and they have not been able to take the delivery of it, and a lot of people are still wanting it, and US has already made F-47, and even the F-16s are still very, very good jets. So it just shows like US works on a different level. So let's see what is F-47.
The era of US air dominance is entering a new chapter, one forged in secrecy, speed, and staggering power. For over a decade, the F-35 ruled the skies. Its fifth-generation tech putting America miles ahead of the competition. But that crown is already being passed on, quietly. Because while the world was still debating the price tag of next-gen air power, the next generation was already airborne. Enter the F-47, a shadow jet born under the next-generation air dominance program, a sixth-generation monster that's not just real, it's already flying top-secret missions. And if the rumors are true, it's unlike anything.
And you know how India is still buying Rafale jets, and that is 4.5 generation. And we are still very happy with that.
And they are so ahead of us.
They are making 6th generation jets, so it is just like too far ahead of us. Somebody needs to make them stop.
The world has ever seen.
Or we need to
Let's
go
take
fast.
a closer look at everything we know about the F-47 so far and why it could completely rewrite the rules of aerial warfare. This next-gen fighter is being sent out to test its systems and has been doing so for at least 3 years. The news comes straight from President Donald Trump and Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth, who revealed that aircraft manufacturer Boeing beat out Lockheed Martin's offering to win the $20 billion contract to produce the planes for the US military and its allies. Even more surprisingly, the new planes are supposed to become fully operational and integrated into the armed forces by the end of the 2020s.
What?
So let's dive into everything we know about
I have
the
normally seen
F-47
it
so
takes
far,
5, 10
how it
years,
compares
20
to
years.
current generation aircraft, and what it means for the future of
so
warfare.
fast.
They will
But
do
first,
this in
let's
next
go
2,
over
3
what the
years.
most recent announcements suggest about the aircraft's progress. According to DARPA, the aircraft has been in active testing since at least 2019. DARPA also states that two types of demonstrator and testing aircraft made by Boeing and Lockheed Martin have accumulated hundreds of flight hours from that time. Boeing and Lockheed Martin have been the two principal manufacturers for US fighter aircraft for over 30 years now. DARPA suggested that active involvement in the program began in 2014, leading to an approximately 10-year developmental process. Furthermore, Trump's announcement that the aircraft would go into service by 2030 makes the F-47 one of the most quickly developed fighter jets in modern times. For reference, the F-35 was designed throughout the 1990s, reached demonstrator aircraft phase around 1996, and the first actual F-35 took flight in 2006. Still, it took 9 more years before the F-35 became part of the US Marine Corps, the first branch of the US Armed Forces to include the aircraft. When you compare the two timelines, you can see that the F-47 might have a much faster turnaround than previous fighter jet models. This might largely be due to the need for more effective modern defenses, specifically in the wake of increased space-bound surveillance and the development of the US Space Force. Supporting this sped-up development is the increased military budget, as the numbers behind the F-47 program are reshaping America's entire defense strategy. Congress didn't just approve the funding for the F-47, it cannibalized other programs to pay for it. The 2026 defense budget proposal will cut F-35 procurement from 74 aircraft to just 47, redirecting those billions toward next-generation systems. The A-10 Warthog, beloved by ground troops but increasingly vulnerable to modern air defenses, faces complete retirement by the end of 2026 to fund advanced platforms like the F-47 and B-21 Raider. These moves are a fundamental strategic pivot. The Pentagon is betting America's future on platforms that can operate in highly contested environments against near-peer adversaries rather than supporting counterinsurgency operations. The F-47 program alone is projected to cost over $100 billion across its lifetime, with each aircraft carrying a price tag approaching $300 million. That's more than double the cost of an F-35. But some Pentagon officials argue the capability gap justifies the expense, which we'll get to in a moment. The 2026 budget, for example, could allocate roughly $3.5 billion for F-47 development, which is practically a 50% increase from the previous budget of only $2.4 billion. Beginning in 2025, the Air Force planned to inject roughly $20 billion into the development of the aircraft over the next 5 years, which would extend to 2029, the anticipated date when the aircraft is expected to become deployment-worthy for active use in the US Air Force. The recent overhauls to the budget could flip the script to a more hardline approach where the US tries to funnel as much funding as possible to US fighter jet developments. This is in line with Trump's proposals to get the US military budget to above $1 trillion in 2026, breaking all previous military spending
1
records.
trillion?
The budget reallocation
Our
also
economy
reflects
is
hard
3-4
lessons
trillion.
learned from Ukraine, where
And they're
expensive
spending 1
platforms
trillion.
become
Yeah.
liabilities in
On just
drone-saturated
military.
environments. The F-47 has advanced stealth capabilities and can more easily operate from standoff distances. This makes it an ideal platform for long-range warfare and brings it up to 21st century standards. And there's the matter of the name. The F-47 harkens back to the P-47 fighter bomber that was hailed as indestructible during World War II. As the heaviest single-engine fighter at the time, the P-47 could absorb enemy hits and remain flight-worthy. Coincidentally, when the naming schematic was revised after the war, the designation for P-47 for Pursuit was changed to F-47. Coincidentally, the US Air Force was made a separate branch of the US military in 1947, and Trump, who announced the project's advancement to development and procurement, is the 47th President of the United States. With a
everything
name
is
like that,
in
the
sync.
F-47 is a clear signal that the US Air Force plans to maintain a stranglehold on air supremacy for decades to come, driven by ambitious projects like the billions in spending that will be allocated to place the F-47 miles above the competition. With that said, let's dive into what makes the F-47 one of the most advanced aerial platforms yet, and why it might just justify all the hype. Let's start with the F-47's brain, designed to push air warfare into a new era.
Yeah,
Its
I think
avionics
the
suite
built
builds
with
on
the
what the
best AI
F-35
technology.
pioneered with sensor fusion, combining radar, infrared, and electronic warfare data into a single integrated picture, but with significantly more speed, range, and processing power. Reports suggest the F-47 will feature a next-generation radar system that could exceed even the F-22's long-range detection capabilities. Where things start to get interesting is in how the F-47 handles threats. While the exact systems are classified, it's believed that the aircraft will incorporate adaptive mission systems capable of rapidly processing new electronic warfare signatures and sharing data with nearby aircraft. Unlike legacy jets that rely on updates from ground stations, the F-47 may be able to adjust its responses dynamically, effectively acting as a flying command node. That would require
it can do all the
enormous
things
onboard
alone.
computing power, less a fighter jet and more a supercomputer with wings. But that's not a bug, it's the whole point. Enter the Collaborative Combat Aircraft Program, or CCA.
pilot
With the
becomes so
CCA,
powerful.
there's no focus on a single fighter in the sky anymore. Instead, the CCA replaces a single aircraft with an entire battle network, all commanded by a single fighter jet in real time. The F-47 would basically amount to a command and control center for the most sophisticated drone swarm ever deployed. These aren't your basic reconnaissance drones either. The YFQ-42A and the YFQ-44A CCAs are essentially unmanned fighters in their own right, each carrying
will be
advanced
like an
air-to-air
aircraft
missiles
carrier
and
in
other
the air.
precision strike weapons,
Yeah.
while maintaining stealth signatures of current generation fighters.
But it'll be a
However, being
drone craft
unmanned,
carrier.
the aircraft's cross-section can be greatly slimmed down, further reducing its visibility in enemy airspace. The CCAs will be responsible for conducting the actual strikes. The F-47's pilot or weapons system officer, depending on the configuration Boeing settles on, which we'll discuss later, can use the aircraft's advanced radar and detection systems to zero in on viable targets. Then, it can direct semi-autonomous
Very
CCA
scary,
drones, which will deploy
Actually.
long-range missiles at ranges approaching that of traditional standoff range. Here's what makes this absolutely revolutionary. A single F-47 can command multiple semi-autonomous wingmen simultaneously. While the F-22 was designed for one-on-one aerial duels or precision strikes,
Oh,
the
wow.
F-47 turns every engagement into a coordinated swarm attack where the enemy faces impossible odds. And there's
So
always
like
an
a
option of
bot.
bringing more F-47s for a mission, which
India
opens the door
should
for
buy
true
this.
swarm tactics
Just
that can
order for this.
overwhelm the enemy detection systems and
I
defenses.
know America will
the
not give
CCAs
this,
operate with advanced
but
AI
still order.
systems that would have seemed like science fiction
Because
just
when
5 years
Americans see
ago.
money,
They can identify targets,
they
select
like it.
weapons, and execute attacks with minimal human oversight. But they never go fully autonomous for lethal decisions. The human operator will be in charge of the final decision to let the drone launch its projected attacks, giving that final but important bit of control over to the US forces. As far as the procurement figures go, May 2025 reports suggest that there will be at least 185 F-47s built for the US
Directly
military.
185.
By contrast, the
Not 20,
US
not
government
30.
plans to acquire over 1,000 CCA drones, based on projections tied to future NGAD and F-35 fleet integration. And those are just the estimates as of now, before the first production models even roll out. There's a possibility that more modern designs will come out to shatter these figures. Speaking of the aircraft's ability to engage targets at range, there are two major aspects of how it's meant to accomplish that. First, there's the engagement range for long-range weaponry. For the F-47, this is estimated to be over 1,000 nautical miles, far higher than any other fighter jet in existence, with a top speed surpassing Mach 2. The high speed and the long range would supposedly come from the more advanced sensor capabilities, as well as evolving integrations of detection systems across platforms. Until we get more details, the best running theory is that the aircraft will be able to leverage space satellites for detection, then use its fleet of CCA drones to bridge the gap between itself and enemy aircraft or strategic targets. After that, the CCA drones, which are marketed as having an admirable engagement range of around 700 nautical miles, would take over, lugging their precision strike missiles and bombs the last miles before actual launch.
They'll work
The
together.
second part of how the F-47 plans to keep the game firmly in America's corner is through stealth. The F-47's stealth capabilities have been categorized as Stealth Plus Plus, a classification that literally didn't exist before this aircraft. While the F-22's stealth design focused primarily on defeating radar systems from the 1990s, the F-47 was built to remain invisible against threats that might not even exist at the time the aircraft takes its maiden flight for the US Air Force. The actual model of operation is highly classified, of course, but the best theories we have are that the material and paint itself will be more effective at breaking radio wave patterns. The F-47 would also likely include active stealth systems that can generate countersignals to cancel out radar returns entirely, making it effectively invisible rather than just difficult to detect. For comparison, the F-35, whose stealth technology designation was just stealth, is said to have a radar cross-section of 0.005 meters squared in the frontal view.
Very small.
And the F-22 with Stealth Plus is rumored to have a radar cross-section of 0.0001 meters squared. By simple logic, the radar signature of the F-47 should be even lower, which would defy imagination. But the design images we've seen are probably unreliable. Defense officials have confirmed that the renderings released so far are placeholders, not intended to reflect the final F-47 configuration, specifically to prevent adversaries from developing countermeasures. China and Russia are undoubtedly analyzing every released image, so the Pentagon is likely releasing carefully curated disinformation about the aircraft's true appearance.
Because
the
they can
tailless
copy
delta
very
wing
fast.
configuration visible in satellite imagery represents just one possible layout of the aircraft. For reference, the first image suggested an aircraft with a canard wing design. However, renderings attributed to Boeing's NGAD proposal show a clean delta wing configuration without canards. Boeing reportedly uses advanced computational design tools to iterate aircraft concepts digitally before physical prototyping. This means the final production F-47 might look completely different from the test aircraft, depending on its intended role. It would also explain the accelerated design and production pipeline that would allow the aircraft to be deployed in less than 15 years from start to finish. Another question concerns the crew complement of the F-47, which might be one of the most critical decisions in the program's development. This time, the decision reveals how the F-47 will be operated and function in combat. There are two options here, a single-seat configuration, like modern US fighter jets, or the double-seat configuration of the old F-14 or F-15E that was replicated in China's unveiled J-20S. A single-seat configuration offers obvious advantages in reduced weight, lower costs, simplified systems integration, and better stealth characteristics. In this configuration, the onboard computer and AI would handle much of the sensor fusion, threat analysis, and drone coordination. It would allow the single pilot to theoretically manage the entire battle network while focusing on high-level strategy and critical decisions. But there's a problem. Current AI capabilities, despite their impressive advances, still can't match human judgment in complex, time-critical situations. Military AI might excel at pattern recognition and data processing, but struggle with contextual understanding and ethical decision-making. Add to that sensor data coming from possibly a dozen smaller CCA aircraft, and there's a distinct possibility that it will be impossible to train a fighter pilot to take in and process all of that information and make a commanding decision while also flying the plane. The double-seat configuration allows for a weapons system officer specifically trained in drone coordination and sensor management. This human-AI partnership could prove critical during complex missions where split-second decisions determine success or failure. The F-15E's proven two-person crew model demonstrates how dividing responsibilities between a pilot and a weapons officer can result in improved mission effectiveness. Of course, there's a possibility that the F-47 could have a configurable cockpit that can operate in either single or double-seat modes, depending on mission requirements. High-risk penetration missions might use single-seat configurations for maximum stealth, while complex multi-target strikes could employ two-person crews for optimal coordination. Speaking of the cockpit configuration, the F-47's cockpit represents the culmination of an evolution that began with the F-16's revolutionary hands-on throttle and stick (HOTAS) controls, and continued through the F-22's integrated displays and the F-35's helmet-mounted display system. While the F-16 required pilots to look down at mechanical instruments, the F-22 and F-35 brought critical information up to eye level through advanced heads-up displays and helmet systems. The F-47 will likely take this concept to the futuristic level with augmented reality. Instead of looking at screens or even helmet displays, F-47 pilots would get projections that overlay tactical information directly onto their field of vision.
How?
Imagine seeing enemy
How?
aircraft highlighted in red, friendly forces in blue,
They are
and optimal
so
attack
advanced.
vectors drawn as
Wow.
glowing lines in three-dimensional space. The side-stick configuration pioneered by the F-16 and refined in the F-22 and F-35 becomes even more critical in the F-47,
F-47
where
is
pilots
too
need
advanced.
unobstructed
Yeah.
views of multiple information streams
No country is
simultaneously,
ready for
with
this.
multiple semi-autonomous drones to coordinate, each filled with potentially tons of explosives in their payloads. Every square inch of cockpit real estate matters. And this integration and communication between the F-47 and its drone swarm extends to the entire philosophy behind the aircraft's design. The F-47 doesn't exist in isolation. It's part of a range of military transformations begun at the end of the Cold War and which aim to improve America's power projections in an age where China has leapfrogged in its own technological
Actually.
prowess. This strategic shift becomes clear when you examine parallel developments across every military domain.
This jet is from the future because all the things that it had, like that radar part was, or not the hands-on display part was something that was very crazy for me. Like normally we have an on-screen display and we have a screen display in front of us, but in this they will be able to see a clear view of it, and they could just mark the enemy, like in games we do it. I played Far Cry game and it happens similarly. So if they are doing that, then this jet becomes impossible to defeat.
I think so. We need this jet. I mean, it is very expensive, but the quality it has and also the design and everything. I think so. This is like so much one of the best jets they have ever made.
Actually, so what do you guys think about it? Do let us know in the comment section below. So do like, share, and
Subscribe.
Bye.
Bye.